Hello, I'm Alexandria Petrassi. I'm the lead editor here at Floodmark. And tonight, in honor of NaNoWriMo, I wanted to read a Sherman Alexie story from his collection The Lone Ranger and Tonto, Fistfight in Heaven. So I'm going to read the opening story called Every Little Hurricane. And I chose this story it's pretty simple, actually. I'm just a huge fan of Sherman Alexie in general. And this was the first short story I read by him. So I hope you enjoy. And this is called Every Little Hurricane. Although it was winter, the nearest ocean 400 miles away, and the tribal weathermen asleep because of boredom, a hurricane dropped from the sky in 1976 and fell so hard on the Spokane Indian Reservation that it knocked Victor from his bed and his latest nightmare. It was January, and Victor was 9 years old. He was sleeping in his bedroom in the basement of the HUD house when it happened. His mother and father were upstairs, hosting the largest New Year's Eve party in tribal history when the winds increased and the first tree fell. "God damn it," one Indian yelled at another as the argument began. "You ain't shit, you fucking apple." The two Indians raged across the room at each other. One was tall and heavy, the other was short, muscular, high pressure and low pressure fronts. The music was so loud that Victor could barely hear the voices as the two Indians escalated the argument into a fist fight. Soon there were no voices to be heard, only guttural noises that could have been curses or wood breaking. Then the music stopped, so suddenly that the silence frightened Victor. "What the fuck's going on?" Victor's father yelled, his voice coming quickly and with force. It shook the walls of the house. "Adolf and Arnold are fighting again," Victor's mother said. Adolf and Arnold were her brothers, Victor's uncles. They always fought, had been fighting since the very beginning. "Well, tell them to get their goddamn asses out of my house," Victor's father yelled again, his decibel level rising to meet the tension in the house. "They already left," Victor's mother said. "They're fighting out in the yard." Victor heard this and ran to his window. He could see his uncles slugging each other with such force that they had to be in love. Strangers would never want to hurt each other that badly. But it was strangely quiet, like Victor was watching a television show with the volume turned all the way down. He could hear the party upstairs move to the windows, step onto the front porch to watch the battle. During other hurricanes broadcast on the news, Victor had seen crazy people tie themselves to trees on the beach. Those people wanted to feel the full force of the hurricane firsthand, wanted it to be like an amusement ride. But the thin ropes were broken, and the people were broken. Sometimes the trees themselves were pulled from the ground, and both the trees and the people tied to the trees were carried away. Standing at his window, watching his uncles grow bloody and tired, Victor pulled the strings of his pajama bottoms tighter. He squeezed his hands into fists and pressed his face tightly against the glass. "They're going to kill each other," somebody yelled from an upstairs window. Nobody disagreed, and nobody moved to change the situation. Witnesses. They were all witnesses and nothing more. For hundreds of years, Indians were witnesses to crimes of an epic scale. Victor's uncles were in the midst of a misdemeanor that would remain one, even if somebody was to die. One Indian killing another did not create a special kind of storm. This little kind of hurricane was generic. It didn't even deserve a name. Adolf soon had the best of Arnold, though, and was trying to drown him in the snow. Victor watched as his uncle held his other uncle down, saw the look of hate and love on his uncle's face and the terrified arms of his other uncle flailing uselessly. Then it was over. Adolf let Arnold loose, even pulled him to his feet, and they both stood facing each other. They started to yell again, unintelligible and unintelligent. The volume grew as other voices from the party upstairs were added. Victor could almost smell the sweat and whiskey and blood. Everybody was assessing the damage, considering options. Would the fight continue? Would it decrease in intensity until both uncles sat quietly in opposite corners, exhausted and ashamed? Could the Indian Health Service doctors fix the broken nose and sprained ankles? But there was other pain. Victor knew that. He stood at his window and touched his own body. His legs and back hurt from a day of sledding. His head was a little sore from where he bumped into a door earlier in the week. One molar ached from cavity. His chest throbbed with absence. Victor had seen the news footage of cities after hurricanes had passed by. Houses were flattened, their contents thrown in every direction. Memories not destroyed, but forever changed and damaged. Which is worse, Victor wanted to know, if memories of his personal hurricanes would be better if he could change them. Or if he just forgot about all of it. Victor had once seen a photograph of a car that a hurricane had picked up and carried for 5 miles before it fell onto a house. Victor remembered everything exactly that way. On Christmas Eve, when he was 5, Victor's father wept because he didn't have any money for gifts. Oh, there was a tree trimmed with ornaments, a few bulbs from the trading post, one string of lights, and photographs of the family with holes punched through the top, threaded with dental floss, and hung from tiny branches. But there were no gifts, not one. "But we've got each other," Victor's mother said, but she knew it was just a dry recitation of the old Christmas movies they watched on television. It wasn't real. Victor watched his father cry huge, gasping tears. Indian tears. Victor imagined that his father's tears could have frozen solid in the severe reservation winters and shattered when they hit the floor, sent millions of icy knives through the air, each specific and beautiful, each dangerous and random. Victor imagined that he held an empty box beneath his father's eyes and collected the tears, held that box until it was full. Victor would wrap it in Sunday comics and give it to his mother. Just the week before, Victor had stood in the shadows of his father's doorway and watched as the man opened his wallet and shook his head. Empty. Victor watched his father put the empty wallet back in his pocket for a moment, then pull it out and open it again. Still empty. Victor watched his father repeat this ceremony again and again, as if the repetition itself could guarantee change. But it was always empty. During all these kinds of tiny storms, Victor's mother would rise with her medicine and magic. She would pull air down from empty cupboards and make fry bread. She would shake thick blankets free from old bandanas. She would comb Victor's braids into dreams. In those dreams, Victor and his parents would be sitting in Mother's Kitchen restaurant in Spokane, waiting out a storm. Rain and lightning, unemployment and poverty, commodity food, flash floods. "Soup," Victor's father would always say. "I want a bowl of soup." Mother's Kitchen was always warm in those dreams. There was always a good song on the jukebox, a song that Victor didn't really know, but he knew it was good. And he knew it was a song from his parents' youth. In those dreams, all was good. Sometimes, though, the dream became a nightmare, and Mother's Kitchen was out of soup. The jukebox only played country music, and the roof leaked. Rain fell like drums into buckets and pots and pans set out to catch whatever they could. In those nightmares, Victor sat in his chair as rain fell, drop by drop, onto his head. In those nightmares, Victor felt his stomach ache with hunger. In fact, he felt his whole interior sway, nearly buckle, then fall. Gravity. Nothing for dinner except sleep. Gale and unsteady barometer. In other nightmares, in his everyday reality, Victor watched his father take a drink of vodka on a completely empty stomach. Victor could hear the near poison fall, then hit flesh and blood, nerve and vein. Maybe it was like lightning tearing an old tree into halves. Maybe it was like a wall of water, a reservation tsunami crashing onto a small beach. Maybe it was like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Maybe it was like all of that. Maybe. But after he drank, Victor's father would breathe in deep and close his eyes, stretch and straighten his neck and back. During those long drinks, Victor's father wasn't shaped like a question mark. He looked more like an exclamation point. Some people liked the rain, but Victor hated it, really hated it. The damp, humidity, low clouds, and the lies. Weathermen. When it was raining, Victor would apologize to everyone he talked to. "Sorry about the weather," he would say. Once, Victor's cousins made him climb a tall tree during a rainstorm. The bark was slick, nearly impossible to hold on to, but Victor kept climbing. The branches kept most of the rain off him, but there were always sudden funnels of water that broke through, startling enough to nearly make Victor lose his grip. Sudden rain like promises, like treaties. But Victor held on. There was so much that Victor feared, so much his intense imagination created. For years, Victor feared that he was going to drown while it was raining, so that even when he thrashed through the lake and opened his mouth to scream, he would taste even more water falling from the sky. Sometimes he was sure that he would fall from the top of the slide or from a swing, and a whirlpool would suddenly appear beneath him and carry him down into the earth, drown him at the core. And of course, Victor dreamed of whiskey, vodka, tequila, those fluids swallowing him just as easily as he swallowed them. When he was 5 years old, an old Indian man drowned in a mud puddle at the powwow. Just passed out and fell, face down, into the water collected in a tire track. Even at 5, Victor understood what that meant, how it defined nearly everything. Fronts, highs and lows, thermals and undercurrents, tragedy. When the hurricane descended on the reservation in 1976, Victor was there to record it. If the video camera had been available then, Victor might have filmed it, but his memory was much more dependable. His uncles, Arnold and Adolf, gave up the fight and walked back into the house, into the New Year's Eve party, arms linked, forgiving each other. But the storm that had caused their momentary anger had not died. Instead, it moved from Indian to Indian at the party, giving each a specific, painful memory. Victor's father remembered the time his own father was spit on as they waited for a bus in Spokane. Victor's mother remembered how the Indian Health Service doctor sterilized her moments after Victor was born. Adolf and Arnold were touched by memories of previous battles, storms that continually haunted their lives. When children grow up together in poverty, a bond is formed that is stronger than most anything. It's this same bond that causes so much pain. Adolf and Arnold reminded each other of their childhood, how they hid crackers in their shared bedroom so they would have something to eat. "Did you hide the crackers?" Adolf asked his brother so many times that he still whispered that question in his sleep. Other Indians at the party remembered their own pain. This pain grew, expanded. One person lost her temper when she accidentally brushed the skin of another. The forecast was not good. Indians continued to drink, harder and harder, as if anticipating. There's a 50% chance of torrential rain, blizzard-like conditions, seismic activity. Then there's a 60% chance, then 70, 80. Victor was back in his bed, lying flat and still, watching the ceiling lower with each step above. The ceiling lowered with the weight of each Indian's pain until it was just inches from Victor's nose. He wanted to scream, wanted to pretend it was just a nightmare or a game invented by his parents to help him fall asleep. The voices upstairs continued to grow, take shape, and to fill space, until Victor's room, the entire house, was consumed by the party, until Victor crawled from his bed and went to find his parents. "Ya hey, little nephew," Adolf said, as Victor stood alone in a corner. "Hello, uncle," Victor said, and gave Adolf a hug, gagged at his smell. Alcohol and sweat, cigarettes and failure. "Where's my dad?" Victor asked. "Over there," Adolf said, and waved his arm in the general direction of the kitchen. The house was not very large, but there were so many people and so much emotion filling the spaces between people that it was like a maze for little Victor. No matter which way he turned, he could not find his mother or father. "Where are they?" he asked his Aunt Nezzie. "Who?" she asked. "Mom and Dad," Victor said, and Nezzie pointed toward the bedroom. Victor made his way through the crowd, hated his tears. He didn't hate the fear and pain that caused them. He expected that. What he hated was the way they felt against his cheeks, his chin, his skin, as they made their way down his face. Victor cried until he found his parents, alone, passed out on their bed in the back bedroom. Victor climbed up on the bed and lay down between them. His mother and father breathed deep, nearly choking alcoholic snores. They were sweating, although the room was cold, and Victor thought the alcohol seeping through their skin might get him drunk, might help him sleep. He kissed his mother's neck, tasted the salt and whiskey. He kissed his father's forearm, tasted the cheap beer and smoke. Victor closed his eyes tightly. He said his prayers just in case his parents had been wrong about God all those years. He listened for hours to every little hurricane spun from the larger hurricane that battered the reservation. During that night, his Aunt Nezzie broke her arm when an unidentified Indian woman pushed her down the stairs. Eugene Boyd broke a door playing indoor basketball. Lester falls apart, passed out on top of the stove, and somebody turned the burners on high. James Many Horses sat in the corner and told so many bad jokes that 3 or 4 Indians threw him out the door into the snow. "How do you get 100 Indians to yell, 'Oh shit,'" James Many Horses asked as he sat in a drift on the front lawn. "Say bingo," James Many Horses answered himself, when nobody from the party would. James didn't spend very much time alone in the snow. Soon Seymour and Lester were there too. Seymour was thrown out because he kept flirting with all the women. Lester was there to cool off his burns. Soon everybody from the party was out on the lawn, dancing in the snow, fucking in the snow, fighting in the snow. Victor lay between his parents, his alcoholic and dreamless parents, his mother and father. Victor licked his index finger and raised it into the air to test the wind. Velocity, direction, sleep approaching. The people outside seemed so far away, so strange and imaginary. There was a downshift of emotion. Tension seemed to wane. Victor put one hand on his mother's stomach and placed the other on his father's. There was enough hunger in both, enough movement, enough geography and history, enough of everything to destroy the reservation and leave only random debris and broken furniture. But it was over. Victor closed his eyes, fell asleep. It was over. The hurricane that fell out of the sky in 1976 left before sunrise, and all the Indians, the eternal survivors, gathered to count their losses.